So in this video we're doing lots of odds and ends, just getting the car up to some sort of roadworthy shape. There's going to be a third one, and that's going to be painting bumpers and all that sort of stuff and cleaning it up and getting it ready for sale. But this one's bits and pieces, and this is how we did it. Alright, just on a bit of a cleaning expedition now. I've got to get some Scotch-Brite and take some of these rust stains off. It's just surface, there's nothing to it, but at the end of the day it looks pretty rubbish. But in the meantime, I don't want to hit it with degreaser or water or anything because I've got to open electrical terminals and stuff like that. But I have got this prep wash. I can take some of this sticky, horrible residue stuff off. Now you can't use gun wash or thinner because if you do that, you'll end up taking the paint with you. I just wish I had somewhere to put it. I'd hang on to this car in a heartbeat. I really would. This is a good car. In order to paint this, probably going to take this bar out here. And I also want to take out the gauze behind it and redo that in the black. And if I take this out, I'll be able to reach it better when I paint it. Here we go. There we have it. I'm going to say hello. Hello. How are you, Roso? We're still working on the old Fairlane, Rosie. Tell you what. When you take all these plastic bits and pieces off, you can really see the workings there. It looks like a vacuum tank of some description. I don't know what that is. There's the anti-lock brakes and all the lines and so forth. This really is in lovely condition. But there's lots and lots of bits and pieces to take off before the bumpers will come out. But at the end of the day, if you want it to be tidy and properly done, it's the only way to do it is to take this bumper off. You got Herbie. Behind here is the self-leveling suspension. Now I remember when I worked for a Ford dealership, we had DALTDs and these things have always been pulled apart. This plug here has been disconnected and I can't see the rest of the loom where it's meant to be, but I remember these were a pain. They were always giving trouble. It's a good chance, I would think, that they've replaced the shockers in the back, so there's probably been made redundant. Always pays to put a squirt of CRC or equivalent on these bolts. These are the top bolts that hold the sort of bumper up against the body, and they've sort of got clips attached to the back of them which sort of hold them in place. And you get to them from inside the wheel arch and they're in pretty good nick. Once you take those out, that should free up and it's not, oh there we go, just a bit stuck. So it's just these ones down here on the bumper irons and I reckon that front bumper will come off. I'll try and cheat and take those off because they're nice and easy to get to, and with any luck it should all become very loose and easy to remove. What is that coming out? Oh, look at that. Excellent. Put in the trailer. Thanks, buddy. Now I want to reassemble this pump. I've got the original O-ring here which is flat and a bit perished, but I want to put this one on. I'm going to try and pop that over here and just see how it fits. It seems to be quite good in terms of the overall size of it. Let's see if this slides over without too much effort. Just got to make sure it doesn't roll out. I'll put a little bit of Vass on there just to help it along a bit. Maybe if I spin it a bit. I might pop this regulator back in. I'll put that in the vise and tighten that up and put a bit of fluid in and see if she leaks. Just generally cleaning up around the place. And it really is starting to look really good, this car. I mean, it looks pretty good anyway. I've done a few power steering repairs, so I can sort of thread this pump back in now. I just don't want it to leak all down the side of the block. Try and put my finger over it. Actually, where's the line? The line's here. The low pressure line. So I've got to sort of put that low pressure line on first. Put a bit of Loctite on here because there's no space behind the pulley to run lock washers. They're quite tight behind there. And I use these sort of spline drive bolts which are quite narrow at the top, and I had trouble getting them off and consequently stripped them. Just got a lock behind here, then I can nip it up. I've checked the pulley clearance, it should be alright. The other thing is, if you're going to use non-genuine bolts, you've got to make sure that they're not too long and they come into contact with the plastic reservoir, because if that happens, you wind up with a cracked housing. And start doing some other work. Just got to tighten that bolt up and put the rest together. Count how many turns it's on. So we go 1, 2, 17, 18, 18 and a quarter, 18 and a half around there. Just spray on there as well, that will slide off a bit. See how ripped up it is. Just cut in half. So I'll take the inner side off and we're good to go. We can put a new one on. But that way it'll keep all that nonsense muck out, you know. Repair that'll look after the condition of our rack. Steering rack. Ends off. And that looks like they're going to be there for another few years yet. Just slip it in and bend it round. Oh, it's looking a little bit better under here. I've just got to get some degreaser and clean up some of those, some of that oil leak from the power steering pump under there. That still looks a bit grotty, but aside from that, we're getting there slowly. Alright, well, we've got to put this power steering pulley back on, and they're an interference bit, they're pressed on. In order to do that, we need to use a special puller. So we need to screw this in. There's a bearing on the end of a nut which helps it go on the way it should. That's here. I'm going to screw this down. They've got a bearing at the end. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on there, and I'm also going to put some on the thread, because it's going to be under a fair bit of duress as we're screwing it in. So I'm just going to put a little bit of grease there, just to aid it. And then we can sort of screw it in to the end of the shaft. There's a thread on the inside of the shaft there, which this adapter is going to screw into. And we're now turning. So I'm going to screw this down now. It's very, very important that this goes in true, because if it doesn't go in straight, the whole job's going to be a shambles. And it doesn't hurt, just to rotate the pump a little bit, just to make sure there's no run out. There's a tiny bit, no, that's alright actually, that's fine, I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to hold this, put it on there, and I'm going to screw it in, and it should start to move in now. It's useless trying to fit these or remove them without the right tool, because all you'll wind up doing is damage it. And in fact, the shaft on this pump had a small bit of damage on it from a previous mechanic's bit of work. I reckon that, ladies and gents, is a win. Now these use an enormous Serpentine belt, fan belt if you like. This one's been replaced recently, it's in pretty good condition, so we can put it back on. Now the Serpentine belts can be pretty hard and pretty confusing. There's lots and lots of pulleys, but most cars that use them use a map which you can copy off to put the belt on. Just got to make sure you've got a bit of tension there, and you can flick that down. Whoops. You've got to make sure this is in the idler properly, because if you have that half out, the aluminium is quite soft and it can strip. The great thing about these cars, they have these wonderful big electric fans, and a lot of hot rodders take these and put them in their own cars. They're all different makes and models. But when we put them in, we need to never ever, we'll need to be very careful we don't forget to plug them in, because otherwise we're going to overheat. Sometimes some nice new fasteners also look a bit better, particularly if they've got surface rust like these ones did. Just makes it look a little bit fresher and a bit nicer. Now this is the reason I hate retread tyres. They just don't look good. Now these have barely been used. You can see the moulding mark on them still there, but of course round the other side doesn't look good. These, in my opinion, although I thought they were roadworthy, I would never ever pass a car with these on. In fact, the car's got two good front tyres. I'd put those on the back, I'd use one of these in the spare, and I'd buy two new front tyres. Things aren't looking too bad under the rear. One thing that does make me a little bit suspicious is that this bush here, it does seem a little bit soft. It's not that bad. It may still be roadworthy, but it looks like the arm sort of worked its way over this side. These are pretty easy to replace. There's a tiny bit of perishing there. Now theoretically that could still be roadworthy. If it's not, it's just a matter of taking that bolt out here, and there's another one behind there. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to spend any more money on this car because I stand to lose anyway, but it's a nice easy one to do. The ones on the bottom, the lower trailing arm bushes, look fine. Now I would be inclined, if I was going to hang on to this car, to put a new exhaust hanger on there. That does look perished and a bit manky, so they're fairly cheap to replace as well. Also looks like somebody's fitted some king springs. They're probably the slightly heavier duty than stock, and there's no leaks or anything there, so they're all still okay. Now there is a tiny lip there on the discs. These still look to be in pretty good condition. It says their minimum thickness 8.5 millimeters. Now I've got with the mic a tad over 9, so they are still roadworthy. The rear pads are good, the inside one's the same, so they can be left. I might bleed the brakes though. Another thing that's worth checking are the condition of these rubber brake lines for any signs of perishing, and they all look to be in great condition as well. Underside of the car looking pretty good. We've still got that oil leak, or the remains of the power steering oil leak we've got to clean off. The exhaust looks all pretty good. Not a bad idea to give the muffler a good whack, the same as the cat converters up the front, because they can be expensive to replace. It has had a little bit of a weep at the pinion seal at the rear axle, at the differential housing, the rear axle. So we're going to take that plug out near the Watts link there and just check that the levels are alright. And of course we've got that rear resonator as well, and that all looks to be pretty good. This car really is in quite good condition. It's quite impressive. Just going to give that a quick wipe. We'll take this plug out, just check the oil level in there. Pretty hard to get to. It should be filled up to the top. You can just use a dipstick if it doesn't flow out, and we're right up there. Look at that, beautiful. So the general condition under here looks pretty good. Watts link bushes look alright, trailing arm bushes look alright, spring shockers look alright, rear axle looks pretty good. Another thing to look at actually, as we can see in here, these rubbers on the universal joints, if they're perished or missing, it's also grounds for a roadworthy failure. That's probably a better view there. I'm talking about these rubbers up here. They all look alright. I've also given this thing a bit of a turn, and there's no free play in there, but that's very important too. As far as this sweating around the pinions going, the diff has plenty of fluid in it, and so that's alright. I would just be inclined to wash all that off. Sway bar bushes look alright. So the consensus here is that we're good. There doesn't seem to be any leaks coming from lines. If we look all through here, there's the fuel filter up there, and that all looks to be in good condition as well. I don't think this car has ever been in any sort of accident. If it has, whoever's repaired it's been brilliant, because there's no evidence whatsoever of any damage underneath, and Everything looks to be quite marvellous. Normally for this I'd use a pneumatic tool from work. I've not got it with me, so I'm just using a conventional syringe. Make sure you've got a rag around. If you do get it on paint, it's corrosive to paint, but it's easily neutralised with water. I'll start to replace it with this nice clean new stuff, and we need to bleed it all the way through the system. It's probably going to use quite a bit because this car does have ABS. Hold the brake pedal down. Up. Down. Just go up and down slowly. Right, so we're just bleeding the brake fluid down. You always start at the furthest corner, and we've done the other side. We're just doing this side now, and we're waiting for the fluid to change colour and go a nice blue. At the moment it's a sort of a murky green. Hold it down. Push down. Bloody hell. Oh, there we go. Push down. Are you down? Yep. Really? Alright, just don't do anything for now. I've got to take this thing out and clean it. Clean stuff's probably gravity fed through. This has got to work. It's working now. Hang on, don't do anything. Alright, have a rest. There's no air in there, which is good. But just the brake fluid was bloody filthy. Well, that fluid was pretty disgusting, but now I reckon we're well sorted. Good, done. Another thing to check on these old Fords, particularly if they've got a few Ks on them, is how the hinges are going. Quite often they drop down and there's excess play in them. Now this has got 240 odd thousand Ks on it, which is no big deal if it's a country car, and I know it was sold in Shepparton, so it probably stayed a good deal of its time there, but if it was 240,000 city Ks where people are getting in and out all the time, it could be an issue. So we just grab it and lift the door, and that's pretty good. You can assume the driver's door is going to be the worst. Yeah, that's got none. There's a tiny bit there, but it's not bad at all. I think that's all right. Other things to check, we've got to power the thing up. I haven't connected the battery yet. I've still got the front bumper and the ambient temperature sensor off, and I just don't want to lodge any codes in anything. We also need to check the seatbelt condition. Now, we're looking for fraying, and that's in really good nick. Dodgy people used to run a cigarette lighter along the edge to get rid of any fraying, but I certainly wouldn't do that. We have to make sure they all sort of click into their buckles and lock in properly and retract, which that does. And so we'll go in and check the others. We also need to make sure high beam indicators working, dash lights are working. All the misting works. I've already checked all that. The mirrors are all working. Headlining hasn't dropped. We have to check all of this, all the seat belts, seat mechanisms, whether they're going to and fro, which I know this one is because I moved it. First thing I want to do is get rid of these things. These actually look quite dangerous. You can see the angle that is. Not a good thing. So I've ordered 2 new ones, and I thought they were $18 plus 9 postage. These were $35 or something. So they were dearer than I thought, but it doesn't matter. They're still relatively cheap. So we can just dig these clips out. Look at that angle. It looks terrible. And we can just jimmy the clip off like that and chuck it out. This on, a bit of slip. We put that there to stop its balls chafing. Cool. Oh, mate. Oh, yes. Who's a clever boy? Excellent. Done. I was only going to do 2 videos. Looks like I've got to do 3 because the third one's going to do we're going to do all the body work, the bumpers, painting, that sort of thing. All the mechanical's done. These look terrific. Scull's back on. Plenum's all nice and cleaned out. Wipers are repainted. Just painted those, make them look a bit nicer. So that's all looking good. Power steering's done. Everything's cool. So I reckon it's a pretty good thing. See you later.